Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you are trying to count something. You have 3 apples. Then you eat one. You eat another. And then you eat the last one. Now you have nothing. But how do you write nothing? How do you say nothing with a number? For thousands of years, people around the world did not have an answer to this question. There was no symbol. There was no word. There was only silence where a number should be. This is the story of 0. This is the story of a number that did not exist for a very long time. And when it finally came, it changed the world in ways that nobody could have imagined. Our journey begins a very long time ago in the ancient world, in places like Egypt, Babylon, and Rome. These were great civilizations. They built cities. They counted their crops. They recorded their history. They were very intelligent people, but not one of them had a symbol for 0. In ancient Rome, for example, the number system used letters. The letter I meant 1. The letter V meant 5. The letter X meant 10. These letters could tell you how many things you had, but they could not tell you that you had nothing. There was simply no letter, no symbol, no way to write an empty space in a number. And this created a big problem. Imagine you are a Roman merchant. You have 105 sheep. How do you write that? The 1 is easy. The 0 in the middle is the problem. There is nothing there. And Romans had no way to show that nothing. So they had to find other ways, complicated ways, to write numbers. Mathematics was slow and difficult. Calculations took a long time. Simple problems became very hard. And nobody yet understood that the answer was hiding in an empty space, waiting to be discovered. That discovery was still many centuries away, but somewhere, in a quiet land far to the east, a different way of thinking was slowly beginning. Our story moves now to a very old place, ancient Babylon. This land is now the country we call Iraq. More than 2,000 years ago, the Babylonians were very good at mathematics. They watched the stars. They studied the sky. They built great temples. And because they studied the sky so carefully, they needed very precise numbers. They could not afford to make mistakes when they recorded the movements of planets. And so, over many years, they noticed something. When there was an empty space inside a number, they needed to show it. They needed some kind of marker, a placeholder, something that said, there is nothing here, but something comes after this. So they began to use a simple symbol. It was not a circle. It was more like 2 small diagonal marks, like a tiny stamp pressed into clay. They used this symbol to show an empty position inside a number, not at the end, but in the middle. This was an important moment in our story. For the first time, a civilization was trying to say, this empty space matters. This nothing is part of the number. But there was still something missing. The Babylonians used their little symbol only as a tool, only as a helper inside a number. They did not think of 0 as a number itself. They did not ask, can we calculate with this? Can nothing be added? Can nothing be multiplied? These questions were not yet part of their thinking. 0 was a space. 0 was a gap. But 0 was not yet truly born. The birth of 0, the real moment when nothing became something, was still waiting. It was waiting in a land of rivers and ancient wisdom, in a place where thinkers sat quietly and asked questions that no one had ever asked before. and their answer would change everything. This is the part of our journey that many people do not know, and it is one of the most beautiful parts. We travel now to ancient India. Around 1400 years ago, perhaps more, something extraordinary happened in Indian mathematics. Thinkers and scholars in India began to do something no one had done before. They began to think of zero not just as an empty space, but as a real number. A number with its own identity. A number that could be used in calculations. One of the most important names in this story is Brahmagupta. He was an Indian mathematician and astronomer who lived around the year 628 AD. He wrote a great book about mathematics and astronomy. And in that book, he did something remarkable. He wrote rules for using zero in calculations. He said, if you add zero to a number, the number does not change. He said, if you subtract zero from a number, the number stays the same. He wrote these ideas clearly, for the first time in history. This was not just an empty space anymore. This was a number, a real, working number. And Brahmagupta asked even deeper questions. What happens when you divide by zero? He tried to answer this, though this particular question would not be fully answered for many more centuries. But the point is this. In India, zero became alive. It became part of the family of numbers. It was given a home in the number system we now call the Hindu-Arabic numeral system. This is the same system you use today. The digits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0. All of them come from India. This was India's great gift to the world. And slowly, quietly, this gift began to travel. Every great idea needs a journey. And zero's journey took it west, from India into the great cities of the Islamic world. This was a time of extraordinary learning. Around the 8th and 9th centuries AD, cities like Baghdad were among the most educated places on earth. Scholars came from many lands. Libraries were filled with books. Thinkers studied medicine, science, astronomy, and mathematics. And these scholars discovered the Indian number system. They studied it carefully. They translated it into Arabic, and they understood how powerful it was. One of the most important figures in this part of our story is a man named Al-Khwarizmi. He was a mathematician who lived in Baghdad around the year 800 AD. He wrote books that explained the Indian number system, including zero, in a clear and useful way. His work was so important that his name became the origin of a word we still use today: algorithm. An algorithm is a set of steps to solve a problem. Every time you use a computer or a phone, algorithms are working, and the word comes from Al-Khwarizmi. Zero traveled with his ideas. Zero traveled in books and in the minds of merchants and scholars. And slowly, over many years, this small number, this symbol for nothing, made its way toward Europe. But Europe was not ready to receive it easily. The story of how zero entered Europe is also a story of resistance, of fear, and of a very long argument about what numbers really are. Imagine something new coming into your life, something that changes the way you see everything. Sometimes people welcome new things with open arms, and sometimes they are afraid. When zero arrived in Europe, many people were afraid of it. This happened slowly, beginning around the 10th and 11th centuries. European merchants began to hear about a new way of writing numbers, a way that came from the Islamic world, and before that, from India. Some merchants tried it. They could see that calculations became much easier. With zero and the Hindu-Arabic numeral system, you could add and multiply large numbers without confusion. The old Roman numerals were slow and complicated by comparison. But not everyone was happy. Some people in Europe did not trust these new numbers. They called them dangerous. Some cities in Europe actually made laws against using them. Can you imagine that? A law against a number, against zero. But you cannot stop an idea whose time has come. Slowly, generation by generation, the new numbers spread. One important moment came in the year 1202, when an Italian mathematician named Fibonacci wrote a book called Liber Abaci, which means the Book of Calculation. In this book, Fibonacci explained the Hindu-Arabic numeral system to European readers. He showed how useful it was. He showed how zero made everything simpler and more powerful. This book was read by merchants, scholars, and scientists, and after this, the change moved faster. Zero was becoming part of European life, and the world was about to change in ways that even Fibonacci could not fully imagine. Now we come to the part of the story that may surprise you most. Because zero did not just change mathematics, zero changed the world. Think about this slowly. When you have zero in a number system, you can write very large numbers easily. 1 million is easy to write. Just put a 1 and then 6 zeros. Without zero, this is almost impossible to write clearly. With zero, science became faster. Astronomers could calculate the movements of stars and planets with greater accuracy. Engineers could plan buildings and bridges with more precision. And then, centuries later, something happened that changed everything again. The invention of computers. Modern computers work on a system of just two numbers, 0 and 1. This is called binary code. Every word you type, every image you see, every video you watch on a screen is made of billions of tiny zeros and ones. Your phone understands zero. Your computer speaks zero. Every website, every app, every digital message in the world is built on the foundation of zero. So when those ancient thinkers in India gave zero a place in the family of numbers, they could not have known what they were doing. They could not have imagined smartphones or airplanes or space rockets. But their gift of zero is inside every single one of these things. The discovery of zero was not just a mathematical event. It was a turning point in human history. A quiet, small symbol that contains one of the most powerful ideas the human mind has ever produced. That nothing is something. That emptiness has meaning. That absence can be present. Let us slow down for a moment. Let us think together. Because zero is not just a number. It is also an idea, a philosophical idea. And it was not always easy for people to accept. Think about it from the beginning. To believe in zero, you must believe that nothing is real, that an empty space is meaningful, that the absence of something is itself something. This was a difficult idea for many ancient cultures. Some Greek philosophers, for example, did not believe in zero. They believed that nothing could not exist. They believed that everything in the universe was made of something. To say that nothing existed, to say that you could write nothing as a number, seemed strange and even wrong to them. This is part of why zero took so long to travel from India to Europe. It was not just a mathematical question. It was a question about reality, about the nature of the universe. And in India, there was a different way of thinking. Ancient Indian philosophy included the idea of emptiness, of the void, of something that contains nothing and yet is real. The Sanskrit word for zero is shunya, which means empty or void. This idea of emptiness was part of Indian spiritual and philosophical thinking for a very long time before it became a number. So when Indian mathematicians wrote about zero, they were not just solving a problem in arithmetic. They were expressing an idea that was already deep in their culture. They were saying, emptiness is real. Nothing has a name. And this idea, given the form of a small circle, traveled around the world and changed everything it touched. And so we arrive at the end of our journey. We have traveled from ancient Babylon to the libraries of India, from the great city of Baghdad to the markets of medieval Europe. We have followed a small symbol, a circle that means nothing, as it became one of the most powerful ideas in human history. What can we learn from this story? The first lesson is simple but important. Small things can change the world. Zero is just a symbol, just a small circle. But this small circle made modern science possible. It made computers possible. It made the world as we know it possible. The second lesson is about patience. Zero took thousands of years to travel from its first beginnings to the place it holds today. Ideas need time. They need teachers. They need people who are willing to listen and learn. You are one of those people. You are here, listening, learning, on your own journey of discovery. And that journey is never too small and never too slow. Every step matters. Every lesson matters. Even the lessons about nothing. The third lesson is about connection. Zero did not belong to one people or one country. It was a gift that moved from India to the Islamic world, to Europe, to the entire world. Knowledge belongs to everyone. And when we share it, when we pass it on like a story told from one person to another, it grows. It becomes something greater than any one person could have made alone. This is what you are doing right now. You are part of a long and beautiful chain of learning. And that, dear listener, is something truly worth celebrating. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for learning with Storyline English. If this story touched something inside you, please leave a comment below and tell us what surprised you most. Subscribe to the channel so that our next story finds you when it arrives. And remember, every great journey begins with a single step. Keep listening, keep learning, and we will see you in the next story.